Credits include Don't Worry Darling and Zola. And the star, co-creator, executive producer, writer, and director of The Curse, Mr. Nathan Fielder. So tell us about teaming up with Benny. Did you guys know each other for quite some time? And also fusing your styles together.
Yeah, Benny and I met, we were fans of each other's work, and we met each other, and then, this idea just kind of came about just when we were hanging out, and we were sort of convinced it couldn't really be a show. It was sort of just an inside joke for a bit, and then we kept talking about it, and then it turned into a show. But we both really, realism is really important to us, and we share like a view of what of how to build the world and all that. And that was a good, tone is so important to both of us, and I think that was like a good starting point. Sorry, was that a bad answer?
That was perfect. That was a great answer.
I was told that they're about to serve you guys lunch. And so, in the back of my head, I'm like, all these people are hungry. So I'm just thinking about it. Okay. Anyway, I'm thinking about the lunch. You guys are probably thinking about lunch.
But you got a huge response here. They're very excited. I don't even know if it's pizza.
Well, some people are here for the food. Let's be real. Is the quality good? Is the quality of the food they're serving good? Okay. Great. That's important.
No, but they're here
You
for
came all this way, and I hope lunch is just as good or better than breakfast.
No. But this is a great series. It's got this docu-style. There's the complexities between you and Emma. Was there something, that you and Benny were looking at? Like, did you look at these HGTV type of couples and you're like, we're going to call BS on it?
I don't know about BS. I think it's just like, we had this idea of, this, when someone says something to you, like, how real does it become? Is it the outside world that is doing things, or is it what's going on in your own head? And so that was like the jumping off point, I think, for the show, to have something like that where the viewer is like unsure if something's going on or it's just the characters building their own downfall. And then the HGTV thing, that was Benny's idea to kind of look at that world. So I think there's a lot you don't see in the shows, and everyone obviously knows, reality TV, a lot of it is faked. But we also live in a time where I think that everyone, feels a pressure to sort of tell their own story and who they are, maybe, which is weird because probably people didn't have to do that before social media and all that. So if you're not a storyteller, how do you tell your story? And that could drive you insane, I would think. Whitney has to is both resistant and leaning on this reality show producer to help tell this story, and it sort of becomes this weird mishmash of what she believes and what someone else sees in a person. And anyways, again, another bad answer, but I'm trying my best. Hopefully you can get a sense of just from the vibe of what I'm saying, as opposed to the exact words. Because I think if this was quoted, this would sound really stupid. But
very eloquent.
If I could just come out here and tell a great story, I probably wouldn't be making stuff like that. I'd be doing so. Anyways, this is my weakness. But Katie's here, and she's a great speaker. Katie built. So you didn't see it in this one, but for those who have seen the show, there are these Emma's character Whitney specializes in building these passive homes, these which are eco-friendly, net zero energy homes, and her homes had a mirror design, and we constructed these structures. Sorry, I'm taking over your job. Anyway.
Yeah, go ahead. No, keep going.
No, anyways. But it's amazing. It's like amazing that we build these things. You ask a question about it, because I'm just...
Well, go into the big build of them, and in the conversations you had.
I'm equally as uncomfortable as Nathan is up here. So we built 3 of these mirrored passive homes. They, 2 of them are built as exoskeletons on top of existing homes. So we found 2, we were looking for the neighborhood that this show could take place in. And there was 1 empty lot, and then there were 2 houses that felt like we could basically build an exoskeleton on top of the houses, which required a lot of math and really amazing engineering on behalf of our construction team. But these homes were built kind of in the same way that Doug Aiken built his mirrored house in the desert. We used the different materials, but in the same way where they're welded, steel constructed. Basically like exoskeletons and mounted with this mirrored plexiglass on top of them.
How long did it take to get from soup to nuts, drafting it to build?
Well, I think actually when I was interviewed, you guys were like, can they be mirrored? And it was like, oh boy. I think
that was like a last minute sort of addition. They weren't supposed to be at first mirrored.
And when you want a job, you just have to say yes.
Oh, oops.
No, but I think it was one of those things where it was like, I saw the potential that it would be the coolest idea. And, also just the idea of the house disappearing in the landscape, reflecting the neighborhood, also just the complications that, actually when I was starting to come up with the idea of why maybe we shouldn't build the mirrored houses to Nathan and Benny, I would come and say well, they might catch the neighborhood on fire. And then Benny and Nathan were like, we'll put that in the script, that's amazing. And then there was another time where I was also there's this issue with birds hitting the homes. And then it was let's put that in the script, that's amazing. So it was all of these issues, I was okay, we're really finding the show as we go.
But it did burn your car.
Oh yeah, so
You had a piece of, okay, you say it.
So when we were scouting, Nathan was like, can we get a piece of this plexiglass that we can just take everywhere so I can know what the world is reflecting? So I'd go stand in front of these houses with this piece of mirrored plexi, and I'd say okay, this is what you'd see, this is what would be reflected. And so this piece of mirrored plexi lived in the back of my car, and within 4 hours it burned the roof of my car. So it was a rental, so production was okay.
And then even when the homes were actually constructed, we started to notice this brown line that would cut across a tree, across the ground. We're like, what is that? And it was the path of the sun every day, and so we had to cover the houses when we would take it off for shooting, and then
and then we had cranes, construction guys would go up and then cover this entire house as if it was tented for termites, essentially. And this would have to happen every single day. And then I remember when we were shooting for a long period of time, I was like, okay, at what point? Is it 8 hours that things start to go crazy? Are we gonna? Are we? What? But luckily, it was all safe.
One thing Katie brought up that I thought was so interesting, you saw in the clip the inside of the homes here, and Whitney, Emma's character, is very controlling about how others use her home, and after she sells the home, she still wants to, because to hold the passive home certification, you can't add an AC unit in, you can't do these things, and she feels that that's disrespecting, and Katie wanted to do, the way she constructed the insides of the homes were these built-in things where the buyer couldn't put in their own shelf because the shelf was in the wall. And explain your philosophy on that, because I thought that was so cool when you...
Yeah, there's that hot shot architect move of I have this idea of how I want the house to be dressed. I know, Alexandra Gerard, who was also a big reference for us, he even dictated what type of cutlery would go into the kitchen. So it was like, oh my God, if Whitney created these homes, she'd be so specific. Like, this would, when she would stage them, the intention would be like, you'd buy exactly what she had. And her house was technically almost like a stage representation of like her ideal version of what this house is. So yeah, like the idea is that there's no real other place to put the bed. You know, it's only against that wall. There's only one type of couch that fits into that living room. And so yeah, the idea that like you can't change it. It always will be what it is.
So the other cool thing about the show is that you casted actual people that live in the community. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. Benny and I were always like, realism and being, because we were in this actual city of Espanola in New Mexico, which is about 30 minutes north of Santa Fe. And it's about, it's like the locations that we're using the real names for a lot of them. And so we really wanted it to feel, our goal was basically if you live in Espanola, people would be like, they pretty much got it good, hopefully. That was like our goal. Like we wanted it to feel really authentic. So we wrote a script, obviously, but I went there a year in advance and spent some time in the area and talked to a lot of people, and then we wrote the script around those things to make sure it was accurate. And then when we were there, when it came to casting, we'd find the location of, let's say, like a taco shop, and there was a person in the script who worked there, but then there was someone who worked there, and if it's a small part, we were sort of like, do you want to do it to people? Because we could never, in our imaginations, we could never be as accurate as the real people that were there. And fortunately, the community was really game to collaborate with us on it. And that was the interesting thing. The element in the show too is that with these home flippers, in these shows, you see these people come into a community often and impose their sort of will on it, and then leave. And so we were sort of conscious too that we as filmmakers are coming into this community, and even though it's temporary, constructing these mirrored homes in the neighborhood. And so we sort of wanted that to be a part of the show when you're watching it, to be thinking about, the level of realism and incorporating real people. And we even had people, how when you're shooting in an area, you might see it's like a mistake in movies where someone in the background will look at the camera. And that's if they're shooting in New York and you're like, oh, that must be a real person. Well, we actually had extras. We directed them to look at the camera. So it feels so you get the real feeling oh, they're really imposing. There's a lot of people in the show that are looking at the camera, but we told them to do it. And we were almost staging they're just a guy who happened to be in the room. So it feels like a mistake. And so the viewer will feel that oh my God, are they okay with this? We wanted people to think about that, because that's what we were thinking about too. We were just really wanted to make sure we weren't doing the thing that the characters were doing, even though we sort of are a little bit.
Yeah, it's really meta. I actually we had a consultant, and an indigenous artist worked with us as a consultant, and I had to approach them to sign the release. And it was 2 weeks before we were shooting the release scene with Kara, and it was just there was a lot of meta stuff happening in the show, where we were all convinced it was a show within a show within a show. We were waiting to find out that it was.
Oh, really? Seems like a terrible environment to work in. I'm sorry.
Everything kept on lining up. It was just this.
Well, that's the thing. We were trying to be so accurate that we ended up like Katie was saying. It's just if something actually happened that was different than what we thought, we were well, this is how they do things here. Let's involve it. So then, there started to be all these parallels in terms of.
Yeah, reality was folding in on itself continually.
But with them making a reality show and them being conscious of these things and us being conscious of these things, it's you can look at the characters and be like, well, these people are absurd, and obviously it's like, some of the stuff's like very exaggerated, but like, there's a part of, you know, these characters that is very relatable, where you sort of decide like what's enough for you in terms of doing good or the limits of your charity. Everyone has a limit to their charity, to how charitable they'll be. And so I think in the show, you get to see the characters like living on that line of like when their generosity conflicts with their livelihoods and how they handle that. But yeah.
Have you received any phone calls from?
What am I? I don't know.
Have you received any phone calls from HGTV with any notes?
Like, how would they know my number? Like they looked me up or something?
They find your assistant or something. They call Showtime.
Yeah, they call. They're like, "Thank you so much for the exposure you're giving us. Thank you for talking about our brand. We're always trying to get our name out there. We really appreciate everything you did." So yeah, I get calls all the time from the CEO of HGTV.
Showtime and A24's The Curse. And we have a raffle. We are giving away, I believe it is version 13 of Final Draft 13 Scream.